From the Lean Enterprise Institute in Boston, this is the WLEI Podcast, where we share stories of people making the world better through lean thinking and practice. For more information about LEI, including how we can help you apply lean thinking, please visit lean.org.
Welcome to the Management Brief. This month, we're exploring the role of continuous improvement groups in lean thinking and practice. Today, Josh Howell and I are joined by Dr. Lisa Yerian, Executive Vice President, and Chad Cummings, Vice President of Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic is a renowned international healthcare system headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. They have been on a lean journey for more than a decade, and both Lisa and Chad have played critical roles in that process. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Chad.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us. So let's start a little bit like we usually do, because we want to get to know you. Please introduce yourselves and provide a little bit of overview of Cleveland Clinic and your work experience, career, and your role. Why don't you start, Lisa?
All right. So thank you so much for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Lisa Yerian. I'm an Executive Vice President at the Cleveland Clinic. I oversee our improvement functions. So I have the safety, quality, patient experience team. I have the lean and continuous improvement team. I have the patient access team. So we handle scheduling and all the access systems. I have the clinical bioethics team, and then a data and analytics team that supports all of the other functions. Cleveland Clinic is a large academic, not-for-profit health system. Our vision is to be the best place to receive care anywhere and the best place to work. So we right there have integrated the expectation of excellence and the aspiration for excellence in everything we do, right in parallel with being the best place to work. So I like that it really elevates the role of the worker and recognizes the essential nature of making it a good place to work to deliver that excellent care. We span about 20 hospitals in the United States, mostly in Ohio, Florida, but also in Abu Dhabi and in London, and a large number of outpatient facilities. We do about 15 million, almost 16 million patient visits will complete this year. So a decent sized footprint, and we have about 83,000 caregivers who deliver care across all those locations, functions, and facilities.
Yeah, thanks again, Mark and Josh. Pleasure to be here today. Chad Cummings, Vice President, Lean Transformation and Continuous Improvement. This is actually a new role that's been established within only the past few months. I find myself returning back to the Cleveland Clinic after being away for roughly 2.5 years. And so previous to that, I was with the Cleveland Clinic for approximately 10 years, primarily serving in a CI capacity and supporting mostly our cancer team. My background, I have a pretty strong background in manufacturing. So I started my career out as an engineer, working for almost 15 years in manufacturing. And so learning a lot of my, or I should say, getting my hands dirty in the lean space, starting out in the early 2000s with Learning to See, which was kind of a game changer for me. So happy to be here today and look forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you. Great to have both of you here. Maybe it'd be good for our audience if you could share a little more of your learning journey related to lean.
So as I mentioned before, the first time that I encountered the concepts of lean were actually back in the 90s. I had an opportunity to work for a company that was Japanese owned. And I was pretty amazed at how efficient and how clean, how they really emphasized people and how they utilized problem solving as a part of their day-to-day work. So this was an automotive manufacturer that supplied headlamps and taillights for a major automotive company. And I was always amazed at the fact that they empowered their workforce to stop the line, to engage with them and solve problems. And I was also amazed at the fact that they spent a fair amount of time stopping the equipment to perform preventive maintenance measures. And so they had a very interesting, for me at least, in my early 20s, interesting way about performance in a system, not necessarily a continuous improvement from the perspective of doing projects. They had it all embodied, which was pretty amazing. From there, went on to other manufacturers who were dabbling in lean, and also at the same time they were dabbling in Six Sigma. And what I found was the fact that those organizations that were doing the Six Sigma forgot one key item, which was to reduce variation, you have to have a standard. And so they spend a fair amount of time learning the hard way to ensure that, they've got to start with the foundation. They've got to start with ensuring that they have standards in place to then drive variation reduction.
Yeah, so my background's a little different. I grew up in healthcare. So I became a doctor because I wanted to make a difference. I came from rural southeastern Ohio, and I'm a first generation college graduate. So a lot of people didn't have healthcare, including my own family. And what we did have access to wasn't always safe, high quality healthcare. And I wanted to change that. So I became a doctor. But after I started practicing here for a couple of years, I started to get pulled into um, meetings where we were talking about problems, and we would have a discussion and talk about all the things we needed to do or should do, and go out of that meeting, and 2 months later the problem would recur. And through that, became connected to a central team that Chad has been a part of for years, that was focused on using lean principles. And through that team, I learned about lean. I remember team members gave me a book called Lean Thinking, and I was quite struck by several components of it. I think the respect for worker element, having a blue collar background, I felt that I was one of the workers, and a great connection to that. Also, like things being visible. Clinically, I'm a surgical pathologist. I look at things under the microscope to figure out what's going on. So having everybody be able to see the same thing really resonated with me as being helpful to solve problems, diagnose and solve problems. And I saw in lean an opportunity really to do what I had initially always wanted to do, which was to make a bigger difference for more people. And I became very interested in learning more about that as quickly as I could. I figured out who was leading that team, and I reached out so that I could become a part of that effort, and doggedly pursued it for several months until they created a medical director role, which I was fortunate enough to step into, and have stuck with it for many, many years, really learning through small amounts of coursework and books, but really through doing a lot with Chad and others on our lean team, and with members of LEI.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Chad. So I think the Cleveland Clinic and the healthcare industry in general are facing some challenges today. So could you share with us sort of your perspective on those macro challenges and how they're impacting the clinic?
So I think there's, from a macro standpoint, there's really three issues. The demand for care has never been higher in the United States. 1 in 6 adults are over the age of 65, which requires, advanced care, and also, there's a higher prevalence of chronic disease. So when you couple that with also our fiscal challenges, and every healthcare system is challenged when it comes to the fiscal issues, policy changes, there's funding questions, and so all of that will continue into the coming years. And then finally, what I would say is our challenge in labor, skilled labor. So where we're primarily based here in Ohio, and in other parts of the world, skilled labor is a challenge, from nursing to administrative roles. We continue to have challenges in getting positions filled and ensuring that we've got the right labor force.
Yeah, I think one of the, in addition to the fiscal challenges, which make it more difficult, I think that as an industry, we had a major setback with the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a ton of turnover in a lot of roles, And I think we've struggled to develop people into their new roles, into new management roles, into new, individual contributor roles, and then build that capability to solve problems effectively, run a good huddle, understand your data, do good problem solving. I think we still have some ground to cover on that. And then the last one I'll mention is workplace violence. The healthcare is becoming an increasingly dangerous industry. We talk about workplace violence incidents in our tier daily huddles, and we will commonly have 10, 20, 30 workplace violence incidents, some of them hands-on with security. So that's part of the fiscal challenge because we invest a whole lot more in security than we once did, but also it's a burnout challenge. It takes a mental toll on the industry and our ability to get people to want to come and work in our emergency departments and in our inpatient units. People are sick, expectations are high, tensions are high. It can be a dangerous place to be. And so I think that is kind of a hidden toll on healthcare that many don't realize.
That's really interesting. I took a trip to Israel about 10 years ago. I had a chance to interact with healthcare in that country, a country that's been obviously experiencing lots of sort of difficult challenges. And at that time, anyway, 10 years ago, violence in healthcare was a huge issue. In fact, I got to participate in some like role playing and coaching with caregivers on just how to de-escalate and things like that. So how would you say that some of these challenges, a long list that the two of you provided, are impacting like the roles that you have, the clinic, the work that you do with regard to lean?
Yeah, I think that we did a lot of work to develop a culture of improvement prior to COVID. We had built a tier daily huddle system. We had built Kaizen system, a lot of problem solving capability and awareness. My role, what I realized is that we need to go back and reinvigorate some of that work, repeat some of that work, redo some of that work. So recently, for instance, we started a tier daily huddle A3 that Mark's been a part of coaching through to say, okay, what was the original intent of this system? Does it still achieve that? If not, why not? And even like, let's go back and revisit and make sure we're all clear on what a good daily huddle is, because we've brought in leaders where we haven't deliberately re-educated or developed them in what is the system, how do you participate, how do you make it effective, what's the intended outcome, how do you know if it's doing it or not. So I think for us, some real rework and I think a greater recognition in how we need to make some of this durable. If you're only turning over a small number of people at a time, people tend to absorb it because they see it, they hear it from others around them. But if multiple levels of leaders vertically or horizontally turnover, then you really can lose a lot of your capability and system, and with that, a lot of the outcomes that you were once driving.
How about if we sort of step back, look a little bit broader than just the Cleveland Clinic? Both of you are leaders, recognized leaders, I'll say even outside the Cleveland Clinic, in the healthcare industry at large. And I'm curious how you think about the support, the leadership that you can provide from your positions within the Cleveland Clinic that could impact the industry as a whole. Chad, maybe you want to start there?
Yeah, I think I would say that the Cleveland Clinic brand is very strong, obviously, and the difference that we can have within our own system can amplify across healthcare. I do believe that organizational values play a role. So I would say our values here at the Cleveland Clinic are very strong, especially in the teamwork and innovation space, which is a great fit for lean transformation and a great fit for how we can actually surpass some of the maybe traditional thinking or challenge some of the traditional thinking that may exist within pockets of our organization. But I do believe that, we have a strength here as part of the clinic, and that is in our values.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I, having grown up in healthcare as a physician, aspire to do is really help bridge the lean community with the healthcare community. Sometimes I hear a disconnect and even some frustration because people aren't doing what we think they should be doing or what we want them to doing. So kind of stepping into that space and saying, okay, let's be deliberate and think about why, what's getting in the way, what is possible, and some additional perspective, skills, tools that help people understand, maybe a little bit of empathy, a little bit of integrity around our own reflection to help us bridge some of those things so that we can all move better. And honestly, I aspire to bring that forward both within healthcare and the lean healthcare community and with the broader lean community, because I don't think they're unique to healthcare. I think communication is an opportunity. I think integrity, in our practices and our real reflection is an opportunity. And I think empathy is an opportunity, probably beyond healthcare.
That's great. Very good answers. Thank you for both of you. So maybe you can build on what you were just saying. Well, Lisa, we can start with you here. Share with us some approaches that have been effective related to what you just said and some things that have failed.
Yeah, well, so one of the classic challenges that we had was, you go into a team and tell the manager that, we're going to start to use lean practices and we're going to engage your team in solving all the problems. And isn't this going to be wonderful? And not understanding why the manager doesn't think it's going to be wonderful. And when you step back and say, really, why 5 times, and you listen authentically to what that person has to say, if your role and what you believe you bring to the world and to your patients is your ability to solve problems, then it becomes very comfortable when that role goes away. You don't necessarily understand or see value in you don't know what your new role is or see how it's going to be better or even more valuable to you. But you can't get frustrated with the person. I mean, you can get frustrated, but you can't stop there. You really have to listen and understand where they're coming from. What does that look like? And help to sort of reframe that as, yeah, well, what that allows you to do then is to be an even more impactful leader, because you're not only, because you're more problem solved and your role is even more important or even more impactful than it was before, because you're developing all these people to solve problems, and that's really the larger, bigger opportunity. But I think a lot of people just get stuck and stop and get frustrated and say, why aren't they doing what we want them to do?
Great.
Yeah, just to expand on that, I think most don't know what they don't know, right? And so as you go into areas and you talk to leaders, they're not fully understanding of the capabilities that can be provided not only by them, but to their teams. So engaging them in a different way to have them understand that lean principles don't always offer a competitive edge, but they do offer the ability for their teams to perform at a different level and to communicate at a different level. And I think that is probably something that I've noticed over probably the last 15 years with healthcare, that it's not a unidirectional communication activity. It's bidirectional. It's about, engaging their teams and ensuring that they have full engagement up and down the chain. So
Great. Okay, so let's delve a little bit deeper into like what's going on with continuous improvement at the clinic. I think a lot of people will be interested in that. But I'll start with a question for you, Lisa. I think you have been instrumental part of Cleveland Clinic's lean journey over the past decade, as you mentioned in your introduction. What role have you played in that journey, and what are your reflections on how lean has evolved?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that role I have played is, maybe again, I'll use the word bridge, serving as a bridge between the lean team and Cleveland Clinic leadership, clinical leadership, physician leadership, executive leadership. I think that I am a trusted physician, which generalizes to being trusted when I bring forth ways that we could solve problems differently, for instance, or some of the lean methodologies and cultural elements. And so I got the lean team into opportunities and spaces that they wouldn't have been in ordinarily or typically without having a physician leader here or having me there. I think I also helped the lean team be, I would say, more courageous, but also more humble and helped kind of frame some points of view and help lead the lean team and shape what our lean journey has been like. I am a big believer in the lean transformation framework. And I think I try to be very disciplined and rigorous in saying, okay, what's the problem we're trying to solve? What's our true value-driven purpose? And, I've seen and heard, I've met a lot of lean practitioners over the years through our own team and through applicants and people who've come and gone to Cleveland Clinic. It's really easy to get caught up in, well, I taught this at my last place, or we need to train everybody in X, and not be really rigorous and deliberate in tying that back to purpose and saying, what is our fundamental problem to solve? And if this capability or this tool you want to introduce doesn't help people solve some problem that's relevant for them and the problem they need to solve, then it's really not going to bring a lot of value. So I think I'm a voice in both sides, in both, recruiting and I think inspiring the team, in building the team and engaging the team, but also in advocating and pushing to executive leadership. This is what lean is, this is what it can do for us, and this is how we should be thinking about using it, expanding it, and leveraging thinking to, achieve our goals.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Lisa, in your industry and other industries that framework allows you to step away from the focus on the tool first, which can take people to the wrong place. Okay, so question for you then, Chad. Your career is a little bit different, as you explained. You spent a decade with Cleveland Clinic, I believe.
Yes.
You stepped away for a few years, and now you're back. With this in mind, share your perspective on Cleveland Clinic's lean journey.
Yeah. So what I'll say is over the past 3 years since I've been away, the one thing that I found just coming back recently is the fact that the lean language has changed here quite a bit in just a short amount of time. And I think that's a testament to what Lisa was speaking of in terms of leadership and leadership alignment and influence, which is fantastic. And the one thing that I would say also is my initial journey here started out project-based. We would get assigned projects or we would engage in activities and we would make some fantastic improvements. However, the challenge with that is it wasn't sustained. It felt, over the course of 2 or 3 years, we would always revisit those same issues. And so where I think we're starting to turn the corner is more systems thinking and more how do we ensure that we've got our systems in place to help drive the right foundation that delivers on, I should say, sustained activity or sustained solutions. But moreover, I think, I see a general curiosity of our leaders engaging in lean, asking questions. How can this help me? In fact, I've only been here now 2 months and I've been solicited countless times to come in and speak to a number of different departments that haven't traditionally engaged in this work. So it certainly has been a big difference, I think, since 3 years ago.
One other, I think, opportunity or place I influence or can influence is that I have a big team. And so developing my own Hoshin, my team's Hoshin, which we're working on now, and recruiting leaders in all roles, including operational roles, who are practicing lean, learning lean, openly talking about their own learning and development journey and engaging others in identifying and solving problems. And I have, Chad is my lean VP, but I have other VPs who report to me who are also very lean avid. And I include that in my, it's in my job descriptions, how I expect you to have familiarity and be applying lean thinking and principles in your work. And I think that, has a broader effect beyond me leading the lean team to be using lean and expecting use of lean concepts and thinking within my leaders. And then people see the impact of that as those leaders drive change.
Thanks for adding that point. That's great. So considering what we just discussed about a few minutes ago, the current state of the healthcare industry and what you both just shared about your experience there at Cleveland Clinic, how do you feel lean can have an impact now?
When we talk and define lean here, we talk about highly engaged teams. So those highly engaged teams coming together, unified by a common purpose, a clear vision. And then also couple that with relentless problem solving. And ultimately, what we want to drive at is delivering the highest value for our patients and delivering also the highest value for our caregivers. And so, if you think about highly engaged teams, relentlessly solving problems, we can deliver on the best possible outcomes for our patients and our caregivers.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity around standards. We put a lot on some of our caregivers, and sometimes I wonder, I've been spending a lot of time in the Gemba because we are experiencing some challenges today that I'm trying to learn more about. We don't necessarily know if it's possible to do all of the things that, let's say, a bedside nurse on an inpatient unit or an intensive care unit, if we give this individual, 100 things to do and say, you've got to do all of them and be accountable for all of them, I feel like standard work would enable us to lay out and say, like, is that even possible? And then are we giving you the guidance to help you prioritize, or are we just sort of tossing it out there and, catch as catch can, everybody's prioritizing different ones. So I think we need to spend, we have an opportunity to spend more time in the work. The other space is in problem solving. So we have some standards, clinical standards that we put into place that we, have been tracking, process, and are we applying those standards? I've seen some really promising and I think exciting work recently where people are just tracking like, oh, we missed the standard, but why? Like really, and I think that's again a sign of empathy and respect to say like, not just you didn't do this, but like, let's talk about why we didn't do this. Why was it hard to do this for this patient on this day in this scenario? And I'm seeing teams with their daily visual management dig more deeply into the why. I like that. And I'd like to see more of that because I think the problems, our standards are sort of just a first blush of standards. I think we need to get more and more depth of understanding into what's getting in the way, and leverage our caregivers to tell us, but we have to ask.
So Lisa, you mentioned the LTF, the Lean Transformation or Thinking Framework. I think you guys have both spoken nicely to sort of the purpose of the Cleveland Clinic as an organization, the purpose of Lean inside the Cleveland Clinic. You just covered a couple of the kind of key methods, like on the process side, the management system side that are in development. I guess I want to talk a little bit, focus in on people development. So could you sort of share your perspective on the criticality and even just the approach that you're taking these days to build capability in the people who are part of the Cleveland Clinic?
I'm not sure how to comment on the criticality other than it's essential. Like nothing's going to change unless people change, and people are going to change. We created a hypothesis back in 2012. We did a culture of improvement A3. So we wanted to change our culture, get beyond the projects that we were doing before that Chad mentioned into a lean culture of improvement, a culture of everybody solving problems, engaged in improvement. Mark suggested we do an A3 because we didn't know where to start. So we did an A3. In that A3, we hypothesized that in healthcare, and in Cleveland Clinic at least, but I think it's broad, people want to make things better. They want to give great care. They're in healthcare for a reason. And most of the time it's not just, it's a job, right? It's because I think, I'm proud to be here. I want to make a difference. I like doing a good job. So we hypothesized that if we could give people the capability to do a better job, to solve the problems, to improve their work, to give a better outcome, that they would do it, but that we had to provide that capability. So capability really became our key lever that we used to build this culture. And what we found was that in most cases, that's absolutely true. If we could engage people in learning through doing how to solve their own problems, they would like it. They would feel both the challenges, it's hard, and the thrills. It's fun and exciting. And a lot of times people make a bigger difference than they thought. And they want to do that again. They like that experience and they want to do that again. I think the challenge is to give that experience quickly and effectively in a systematic way to 83,000 people. And that's really Chad's job. And he's been working hard on his strategy to do that since he started. So I'll let Chad speak to that.
Yeah, so I do think along with what Lisa mentioned, talking about standards and problem solving, it really, if we want to make a change in our culture, we have to really think about what behaviors and right behaviors or correct behaviors we want to drive. But even prior to that, thinking about routines. Do we have the right routines in place that help establish those behaviors? And to establish those routines, you have to build capability in people. You have to give them the know-how and understanding of what good looks like. So, my framework when I think about this, it's, you need to have the tools, you need to have the vision, you need to understand the culture, and that culture starts with routines that form behaviors that then form the culture. But in order to do all that, it sits on our ability to drive capability within our teams, within our CI team, within our leadership team across the clinic. And I do believe that our leader capability, our leader acumen around lean is vital, because they're the ones that touch and amplify so much of our work. And so, from that perspective, I do believe that our culture will be influenced by our ability to build capability within our caregivers.
I really appreciate both your answers, how you're tying together sort of standard work, routines was the term that you used, Chad, with people development. I mean, I think all too often, we tend to hear about people development in a generalized sense, like we want to develop our capability, develop our people. But to hear you both speak kind of systematically or to the systematic approach through which you're taking to build capability in people, to solve the right problems, to improve their work, to better deliver care for their patients, that's really nice to hear. I appreciate you guys sharing. So turning on the topic of capability development, people development, perhaps we could check in on your own development as leaders and in both lean and just healthcare generally. Maybe starting with you, Chad, could each of you share one or two sort of pivotal experiences from your career where you really were challenged, where you grew, where your capability was built?
Sure. So, initially in the early 2000s, I was faced with an opportunity to support a team of scientists on a new product development launch. It was rather challenging. They had their opinions on how things should work. They were all chemists, and fantastic individuals. But what I started noticing was that they were going down the wrong path with this development activity. And so I took a step back and started to develop my own A3 with respect to the challenges that we were faced with. Long and short, the challenges came to fruition. We had to scrub the launch of the product for a short period of time until we came up with a solution. And I presented to the team the solution that, with respect to the A3, going through that methodology, to then share with them a solution that worked. And it was something that I would say is I hang my hat on in my career, listed as a co-inventor on a patent, that they came to the realization that they were missing steps in their process. They didn't understand the full picture. They didn't understand how things work together. They were solutioning before they were problem solving. And so allowing them to understand the full problem was something that, again, we had the opportunity to create a product and launch a product that is still in the market today, which that's over, 17 years ago. So I'm really proud of that moment. And I think the moment that I reflect on is walking through the factory floor, and this scientist, we were doing our pilot run, walked over and said, you're going to make a really good scientist someday. And so that wasn't my end goal, but it was a compliment, meaning that I had the opportunity to drive a change, and with some conviction that I saw them going down the wrong path and was able to course correct them.
I think that's high praise.
How about you, Lisa?
Great.
Yeah, I say maybe two. One of them was when we had started, as I mentioned, this culture of improvement A3, we started working really one team at a time, right? And we called them a model area, and we did the first one, and it was painful and difficult. And then the team started to track their progress as they were implementing countermeasures and saw results, and they were ecstatic, and everything was wonderful. People were very excited. And then other leaders came down and they were like, oh yeah, I want that for my team. I want that for my team. So naturally, I wanted that for my team, which was the CI team. And I thought that was a given. So as we sat down to do our strategy for the coming year, I, of course, wanted that in, incorporated that, put that on the table and thought that, of course, we would do that on ourselves. Oh my gosh, the realization when I started to hear, and Chad was not part of the leadership team at this time, but I started to hear all the things that we would talk about other teams saying when we would engage them around, driving improvement. That doesn't apply to us. We're too busy. We don't have time for that. It doesn't make sense. Our work is different. I wished I'd had a tape recorder playing in the room because it was so much exactly what I would hear from that same team as they went out and tried to do their work with other teams. And I was like, at first I was like in shock, and then I was sort of fascinated. I pivoted to a place of curiosity and like, wow, this is so interesting. What is happening here? And then, the conversation ended. We did not come to resolution. And I walked away realizing like I need to approach this very differently. And I think for me, it was both a realization of I need to be strategic and thoughtful about how I approach change in my team, just like I'm telling all the other leaders to do. And that my team needed that rationale or that case for change. So I, again, same as Chad, I did an A3. I sat through and sat down and wrote down, pros and cons and why and what was getting in the way and everything, and sat down and I had, a revisit conversation the next time with my team. And we made progress and we got there. So I think one is that. That it's not a given even for a lean team. And it seems like that would be the team that it would be most easy for, is what I thought, which is totally wrong. But it's changed for all of us. I'm sorry, Josh, you were saying something?
I just said cobbler's kids have no shoes,
Yeah. The other one I would say is after we had worked with, I don't know how many teams, several teams, after a year and a half into our culture of improvement, I started to worry about us becoming boutique-y and like, well, if this person's leading a model area over here with that team and that person's leading a model over there with that team, that they weren't actually doing the same thing, building the same lean culture of improvement in the same way. So I asked the team to write it down. Like, what is it? What are the core elements? What is the standard? What is that construct? And so we wrote it all down, and somewhere along the line, we realized that, a lot of the 83,000 people who work here at that time, it was like 30,000, they're at a different reading level than the members of the lean team. So we would check it for, 8th grade reading level and simplify it. So we had it down to one page, and I thought it was very clear and wonderful that we now had this model that I had read about other people having. But I met with our corporate communications. We have an internal communications team, and I shared it with them. And the communications person said, well, Dr. Yerian, we need to demystify this. And I was like, I thought we just did. And for me, it was, again, just, another opportunity of learning of like where I'm thinking or where my expectation and mindset is so incredibly different from where it needs to be to really meet the needs of the people I'm trying to engage in this work. And so that was, his name's Kevin. He became a fantastic partner in helping us demystify and clarify the message, simplify the concepts to really make them sticky. And even now today, like now I have more teams and I'm working closely with our quality data team and saying like, we've got to demystify this. We have to make it clear. We have to make it simple. We have to make it easier, or else people's lives and their work are too complicated. They're not going to engage.
Thank you. That's great. I want to head us into kind of the wrap up for this. So with a couple questions, and I'm going to kind of ask me, Lisa. I'm going to ask probably a baby elephant in the room question, not a big elephant, but and I hear this actually, it's not unique. specifically unique to your industry, but I believe it's fairly common in your industry, and you've alluded to it a little bit, is lean doesn't work in this industry. Or I've tried lean and it didn't help. So as you're encountering, and you often are, both of you, leaders in your industry, whether it's within Cleveland Clinic or in a broader context, how do you go about making them aware or helping them take away the doubts and the relevance of its benefits?
I would say, when I hear those comments, I think through, was it timing? Was it an event? Was it delivered in a way that maybe is inconsistent? So that's an area where I think organizations sometimes are challenged, where they have lean practitioners going out and delivering inconsistent trainings, inconsistent approaches, and then it starts to snowball into it doesn't work. We've tried it. So I think, from my perspective, I think consistency is important. Repeatability in the way that we deliver it. But I also think for leaders, they have to be curious. They have to be open to entertaining new ways of thinking. And I think we're at a point in healthcare where we have these challenges ahead, and they've tried a number of different things locally, and now there's more of an appetite that I'm seeing to try something new, try something different. But I think from a lean perspective, it's critical that we are delivering this in a very consistent and repeatable manner.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on a conversation I once had with Jamie Bonini. You said he's also going to be in this series. Jamie shared an experience. We had gone to a healthcare leadership event, and the vast majority of the leaders said they had tried to use lean and that it wasn't seen as successful in their organization. And it was 90%. It was a staggering percentage. I think the question I would ask is why? And if it's somebody who I really need to influence, or maybe figure out what's the problem I'm trying to solve, what do I need to get here? Do I need to convince them that lean works in their industry? Do I need to get them to engage in one small step? And I actually wrote a blog that's on the LEI's website about that ask. Like, if you're asking somebody to support or believe, that's too big, it's too broad, nobody knows what that means. What is it that you really need to get out of this interaction? Do you need them to, commit to going on a gumbo walk with you? Do you need them to commit to sitting down? What is it that your ask really is? To convince somebody broadly that like lean works, or lean works for my problems, that's really hard. If you need them to engage in a very specific way, figure out what that is, figure out what's getting in the way. Was it that their experience of it wasn't good, it wasn't impactful, it didn't target the problems they wanted to solve? Did they not have an opportunity to feel heard? And maybe you can provide that. But I think you need to get really specific quickly in order to try to address that. And then really, like, what are you trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, great answers from both of you. Thanks. Okay, so maybe final question for each of you. What's energizing you these days? Any new work or challenges that you're excited to take on?
Well, I'll start. Being back at the clinic, so just in maybe 2 months, I think now.
I guess you should ask you what is not energizing you. No, I'm joking.
There's very little on that front, but what I would say is, just the openness and the curiosity of our leadership here, our executive team members going through a cohort. And Mark, you're very familiar with this, going through problem solving. That is something that I really never thought about when I was here previously. So just the openness and the curiosity that's happening across the organization when it comes to the delivery of lean application. I spent 2 weeks ago, our COO had a retreat, and it was focused on lean. And they spent, the better half of the morning, we were presenting on lean concepts and lean principles, and talking about the importance of leadership to help drive transformation in lean. So I'm very energized when it comes to what I'm seeing here and what we can do in the next 3 to 5 years.
Great. How about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I think two things. One is we've been working on our HOSHN, and I think for me, as our HOSHN objectives evolve, really starting to see and figuring out how to articulate or demystify, as Kevin would have said, why and how quality, safety, patient experience, patient access, and lean come together in a meaningful way to drive the maximal impact for our patients, for our organization, for our caregivers. So one is that, like, I think it's energizing that I now have these sort of core leaders who are very lean, avid, and open, and sort of bring them together and leverage, as a combined force across the problems that we face. So I'd say that's one. The other one that I think is a mix, energizing and daunting, is to shift in position from trying to be like the convincer and working with the willing and selling it to, like, suddenly your CEO turns around and says, okay, go do it. What do we do now? Like, they hand you the keys to the kingdom and you're like, what do we do now? Are we ready for this? I'm used to selling, not sort of, okay, go do it. It's a very different world. And then shifting from working with the willing, which is what we were doing for a long time because we needed to no, team, we're not working with the willing now, we're working with everybody. So we have to now become much more facile in working in that way, which is a challenge, but also really, and I mean, it's the problem I always wanted to have, right? So it's exciting and energizing and daunting at the same time.
That's a great answer. We hear from our community so much about my CEO just doesn't get it. But you also have to think about, okay, what if they get it? And all of a sudden you have to be careful what you ask for. And that's a great thing, of course. But thinking about how to manage all that becomes a challenge.
And I would even push back to say, like, what exactly doesn't your CEO get?
Hmm.
Like, why? Like, break that down for me, really. And what are you asking your CEO to do? Have you made a very clear, concrete ask? I don't think we've always done all of our own work. It's easier to kind of put it on somebody else and say they don't get it versus turn it around and say, what can I do differently to be more proactive, to drive a different experience or outcome for that leader?
I can't think of a better way to end this interview conversation. That was an excellent answer. Thank you. So, Josh, it was great to be on with you, and thanks both Dr. Yerian, Lisa, and Chad for joining us today.
Yeah, for sure. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to see how things progress with the opportunity that you have, especially in the leadership position that you have for the industry as a whole. So thank you for letting us hear kind of where your mindset's at with it these days, and we look forward to see what happens.